All right, next I want to bring up Alex. Where you at? Are you back there? Okay. She's working with MMP and with a program to try to stop poverty. So what she's doing is real wonderful in the community. I just want her to get a chance to speak on it. Give it up, Alex.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alex Webb, and this is Joe Strife and Only Love Alston, and we'll tell you a little more about what we're doing. We're going to start with a few video clips that should be coming up really soon of Dr. King talking himself. And we spent the last few days here in Philadelphia learning about what is going on in this city. We just came from the Liberty Bell and from standing in front of Independence Hall, the birthplace of our nation, a nation of Native Americans and immigrants. Today is the day that our nation honors the legacy of a leader, Martin Luther King Jr. I've been asked to say a little bit about his legacy. Despite his short life, King's legacy and the legacy of all the history he was a part of is long. He's best known for his leadership in the civil rights movement. Many of us know the stories of the 1955 bus boycott, of Rosa Parks, of students at lunch counters refusing to give up their seats, and the nation going into motion around these actions. We also know the stories of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, and the great victory in 1964 of the passing of the Civil Rights Act. By 1965, King was opposing the Vietnam War, and he began speaking more and more to economic justice as the only way to truly achieve racial and other forms of justice. In the winter of 1967, King said,
"The emergency we now face is economic, and it is a desperate and worsening situation. For the 35 million poor people in America, not even to mention, just yet, the poor in other nations, there is a kind of strangulation in the air. In our society, it is murder, psychologically, to deprive a man of a job or an income. You are in substance saying to that man that he has no right to exist. You are in a real way depriving him of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, denying in his case the very creed of our society. Now millions of people are being strangled in that way. The problem is international in scope, and it is getting worse as the gap between the poor and the affluent society increases."
As we saw in the first video, just a month later, King announced the beginning of the Poor People's Campaign. It was a call answered by people from communities of all colors and religions to come together to demand justice and the right to survive and the right to thrive. Many of us know that his life was taken suddenly in 1968 in Memphis, where he had joined sanitation workers in their struggle for decent wages. King identified in the sanitation workers a struggle that was emblematic of many other struggles, struggles that were the real source of historical agency and change. Again, in the winter of 1967, King said,
"The dispossessed of this nation, the poor, both white and Negro, live in a cruelly unjust society. They must organize a revolution against the injustice, not against the lives of the persons who are their fellow citizens, but against the structures through which the society is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand to lift the load of poverty. There are millions of poor people in this country who have very little or even nothing to lose. If they can be helped to take action together, they will do so with the freedom and a power that will be a new and unsettling force in our complacent national life."
The Poor People's Campaign called for uniting. It brought all types of people together. King envisioned massive civil disobedience, demanding rights in front of the Capitol, building a new Freedom Church of the Poor, taking over hospitals until everyone in the country had health care, ensuring that every child had enough to eat and the right to a real education. Today is the day each year when we are encouraged to remember that this legacy continues. For many of us, King's work inspires us throughout the year. At the Poverty Initiative, in 2008, on the 40th anniversary of Dr. King's launching of the Poor People's Campaign, we took up the challenge of reigniting this campaign. King's call for this campaign, and then its inability to go forward after his assassination, deeply informed our mission of raising up generations of religious and community leaders dedicated to building a broad movement to end poverty led by the poor. For the Poverty Initiative, leadership development is central to the building of this movement. In the last years of his life, King anticipated many of the economic, political, religious, and ethical problems of the present time. Here today, we live in a nation that is at war, where the official poverty rate has 1 out of 7 people living in poverty and 1 in 5 children living in poverty, where the number of people without health insurance are more than 50 million, where there will be 4.5 million home foreclosures this year, and where 1 in 9 homes are vacant. Where in communities we know, taxi drivers, students of all ages, nurses, firemen, media makers, teachers, homeowners are fighting every day for their most basic human rights, for decent working conditions, for wages we can live on, for a right to education in schools free from violence of every kind, for safe communities. Where immigrants in this nation of immigrants are being unjustly and brutally deported to countries that no longer welcome them and that they no longer know as home. Where those being deported are not granted forgiveness for mistakes made many years ago under specific conditions. Where none of the issues that individuals and families are facing are their issues alone. We are faced with a very large social problem. None of us are unaffected today by these struggles, and we will not solve this problem unless we come together. We are here today to continue the legacy of Martin Luther King, Jr., his still relevant vision, his call for a revolution of values, and his mission for this entire nation and globe to live a beloved community. We are here to unite around this struggle today to fight to make a crying injustice, to make right a crying injustice and inhumanity. We here today are the sanitation workers of today, and we must be many Martins in this struggle for all of our lives.
This is what it's about. Like, it's not just, you know, we're not just here to just try to, you know, stop the deportation, but it's more of what Dr. King sees. It's about his dream. It's about, you know, ending poverty. It's about just, you know, our regular rights, human rights that we take for granted. You know, and if we don't stand up to it, who's going to do it for us? The people at home right now that got off, that's not out here, not them. It's you. You guys are leaders, man.